Welcome to Chase The Vase Podcast, where we share stories about those who have fought to overcome addiction. Join us every Tuesday and Thursday for the latest stories, tools, and tricks to sobriety. Now, here's your host, Brock Bevel.
Welcome to Chase The Vase Podcast. I'm here with Brad, the sober bodybuilder, man. I just want to give you a little shout out. You're the owner of Key Nutrition. You're the host of the Key Nutrition podcast. How's that going for you?
Dude, really good, man. Really good.
You guys are doing some good things. You're probably one of the coolest things. You're a father.
That is pretty cool. Yes, I'll take that all day.
All day, man. Yeah, I have 5 of my own and 2 that were given to me. So I got 7, man. The crazy part is I got 6 girls and 1 son.
That's a lot of kids. Jesus. Holy shit.
I got 1 in the house though. That's it. So, and you've been sober since 2012, right? So what I want to ask is, how did this personality, brother, of the sober bodybuilder, like take effect, dude? Is this like a WWF personality? It looks like, man. I see you all over social media.
Sorry, you cut out a little. What was the question?
I said, tell me when that personality of this sober bodybuilder came into play.
Yeah, man, it's interesting. It wasn't like a plan, right? It was so I got sober in 2012, and about 18 months sober, I decided to enter my first bodybuilding competition. And so I got really into it. And I was like, I'm changing my Instagram tag to the sober bodybuilder. And I didn't really think anything of it. It wasn't going to be like this, thing. And so I changed it. And then what's funny is years later, as I started to get more into business, I thought I should change this. And I even had some business coaches telling me, yeah, that's a horrible name. You got to change that. And you know what? I just went with my gut and I kept it. And it's kind of turned into this, I don't compete in bodybuilding anymore, but I consider myself a bodybuilder and I'm still sober. So I always make a joke that if I relapsed, and then I would have to say the not sober, not bodybuilder, and that would be really bad. So
that's hilarious. So what got you into competing?
I was always into fitness my whole life. And I don't know, my whole life, I was a chubby kid growing up, got into fitness and saw the results of it and kind of had this transformation. And so I always said I wanted to compete. I had an aesthetic physique, even in my addiction before it got real bad, that everyone said, dude, you should compete. You should compete. And so it was one of those things that, sitting on the end of a bar stool, drinking a beer, like, oh, one day I'm going to compete. One day, you wait, one day. When I got sober, I was finally like, maybe that one day is today. And so the first time I did it, it was a bucket list thing. It was something I'd always talked about doing since I was 16, 17 years old, reading all the bodybuilding magazines. And it was an amazing experience. It was a spiritual experience in a weird way. It was something like this. I finally pushed myself to do something so incredibly hard. I enjoyed the process. I enjoyed the grit, the determination. Really, it was this whole kind of really cool experience. So what happened was I ended up doing well, which was kind of the curse. So I remember I got off stage because I was just going to do this one and done. And then I got off and actually did well. And so I was like, let's do that again. So I did another one about 9 months later and went through a whole off season. But that one was not so fun. And it was all from the ego is why I was doing that one. So yeah, I only did 2 shows and I was done.
So what was the hook to get you into do it? I mean, you look good. How much time did you prepare for this?
I mean, about 4 months each time, about 4 or 5 months, it was fun. I liked challenging myself. I liked doing hard shit. It was exhilarating. But like I said, the second time the ego took over and I, destroyed a relationship I was in, quit doing some of my spiritual recovery work. And I just got really centered on one thing only, and that was me. And that's a dangerous zone for an addict who suffers from extreme selfishness to give a reason why, hey, this sport, it's not a team sport. I'm not competing. I'm not like with my team. It is you. And you're judged off of one thing, your body. And I'm not saying competing is inherently bad. I went in with the completely wrong mindset the second time. The ego took over and you gave any reason for an addict to be extremely selfish. I ran with it,
And you took it, man. I like that. Tell me some tips, man, because to be able to be at that level, you said it was gritty. What was the comparison with you getting sober and taking that shot to go get on stage?
Yeah, I mean, dude, there was a lot of parallels, honestly. And I like that question. I've never actually been asked that. And I didn't think I could get and stay sober. It wasn't my first time trying. It was probably, legitimately probably my 20th time. Overall, it was probably my 100th time. Like, those little, but like legitimately had tried to get sober 15 or 20 times before. Like like did the whole deal, like really tried. So I wasn't even sure I could do it this time. And when I did, and it was a lot of work. It was hard work. And but I dove in and I did exactly what they told me I should do. And it was painful, that whole process, that first 6 months. I remember watching people get like 60-day chips in recovery meetings. And they're like, I just love myself today and I'm so grateful. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, I hate myself. I was miserable my first 60 or 90 days. Yeah, there's some relief of like not having to chase that every morning but I did hard shit. Like, I relied on other people. I took suggestions. I did the work, and it was not always fun and it was not always pretty, but it was hard. But that built, for the first time in my life, when I got to be about 18 months, I was like, holy shit, I think I can do hard stuff. It built a belief that I could actually do something that I knew was going to be incredibly hard. Because to that point in my life, my experience had shown me that I really couldn't do hard shit. Now, I mean, I could. Living a life of an addict on the streets was hard, but I couldn't actually ever put one foot in front of the other and do something hard. So there was a lot of parallels I pulled from getting sober of grit and determination, relying on other people, taking suggestions, being a student among students, all these things I learned. So
what was the hardest drug for you to kick?
Heroin. I mean, yeah, I was a non-discriminatory addict, but opiates is what pulled me in very first at a fairly young age. Tried them at a party, and what was funny is I had experimented with some drugs and alcohol. 13, 14, 15, but I was that chunky kid, so I got into fitness just by picking up these magazines and books, and I was fascinated. I was like, I want to look like this big bodybuilder. I didn't even know what that meant. Yeah, I had never even lifted weights, but I started applying what they were telling me in the magazines. And so I lost weight, and then I started to transform my body when I was able to get a car and get a gym membership. But I remember, reading that alcohol was so bad for you. Really, like how I read it was, if you drink alcohol, any workout you do was going to be a waste of your time. And it's not really the truth, but that's how I read it as a 16, 17-year-old kid. So I quit drinking altogether, but I still wanted to get messed up. Like, that sounded fun, but I didn't want to drink. And so I was offered some pain pills at a party. And I remember, this is how naive I was. The kid said, hey, do you want some pain pills? And my first reaction, I said, I'm not in any pain. I'm good. And he's like, no, man, they'll make you feel like you're drunk, but you don't have a hangover. And I was like, done, let's try them. And I remember when they hit me, I was like, whoa. I hear people that have surgery and they're like, I couldn't take the pain pills. They just made me sick. I'm like, I cannot relate with that. The first time I took them, I was like, I feel whole, And so that's what I ran with. And opiates in my addiction from 17 I got sober 28 was kind of a mainstay. That's what I did. And so, but I would do cocaine. I didn't discriminate against drugs. I went through a meth phase at the very end with the heroin. That was not a pretty time, but definitely it was the opiates. And that's what kept me from getting sober, was that unless somebody's been through the withdrawals. Like, I don't have a worst enemy, but if I did, I would not wish them upon my worst enemy.
Man, I was going to add, that was my next question. I look at you, man, you're a pretty tough guy. I could see that. But I'm gonna tell you what, it made me the worst. Going through that withdrawal is the reason I don't go back and use today, because I'm scared to go back to that.
How long ago was it for you?
So it was 11 years. Monday, I hit my 11 year, and that was the day I hit the bathroom. I was like, I'm done.
Dude, congratulations, man.
Yeah, man. Thank you. But what's crazy is, like you said, I still remember the pain, like I'm still going through it.
Yeah. It's so crazy how and I'm so grateful for that. It's the same thing. I vividly remember that last time detoxing on the jail cell floor, laying in my own vomit, the cold concrete on my face, and just shaking, shivering, the worst anxiety known to man, paralyzing fear, body aches. I still remember that feeling, and I'm really grateful for that, because that's what keeps me from ever. Like, that is so clear to me where that leads me. It's not pretty.
So was that your rock bottom, going to jail? Was that kind of like your demise? You start fresh?
Yeah. What's interesting is, I'd been to jail. I got caught up in the system about 2006. And so I got sober in 2012. And, once you get caught up in the system, if you're not ready to stop using drugs, you're a former police officer, I just kept going back. And back then, they used to take you on anything. I mean, even pre-COVID, they kind of changed where the jail was getting so full here in Salt Lake City, they're not booking everybody in, but they would take me on anything. So I had 17 bookings in the county jail. And a lot of that was just, I was always on probation and I wasn't ready to stay clean. So I kept getting arrested. And so I'd been to jail a lot. The last year of me using, my parents finally got smart and they put in, my whole family put in boundaries. They found a program called Al-Anon, a sister program to Alcoholics Anonymous, and it completely screwed up my using. I had a resentment at Al-Anon for a long time because they finally put in boundaries. And so that last year, see, my pattern was I would go on binges for 3 or 4 months and something would intervene. The cops, like a jail cell, but more than not, it was detox from my parents, a nice rehab center. Something would intervene to kind of stop the madness. A Suboxone clinic my parents would get me going on, or a methadone clinic. Like there was something that would kind of stop the madness. And they finally got smart after, stealing from them and all the chaos. They finally said, we love you enough. We got to let you go. Can't come around here. So that was really the beginning of my rock bottom that pretty much went for a year because they wouldn't rescue me. My mom was a perfect enabler. She was going to love me to death, literally. I mean, and so they put in boundaries. And they said things like, you can't come around here. If you do, we're going to call the cops. And I was like, watch this. I go over there. They call the cops. I was like, I'm out. And so that year, and I tell people, I'm so grateful that they finally let me hit a bottom that didn't include just a soft little pillow at the end. Like, let's just kind of save you. So it just kept going. And I was homeless that whole year. I was resourceful, so I never slept on the streets, but I was homeless for an entire year from January until November. And I didn't draw another sober breath from January till November. I did all of 2011. I did a longest stretch I'd done in jail. I did 10 months. And I got out and made the decision to go pick up about 2 days out. And that's when they cut me off. And so it went and it went and it went. I was staying in dope houses. I was hanging around people that I never thought I'd be hanging around with. I came from an upper middle class family in the suburb of Salt Lake City. Like I always kind of like kept it together. And that last year, all the fitness stuff went out the window, everything. And so that was really my rock bottom. And it finally culminated with me getting arrested at the very end of the year. But being in jail, I don't know if that was my rock bottom as much as that year just progressively got worse and worse and worse. And I was off probation. So finally I wasn't getting, and I was just like almost praying to get caught somewhere. I'm like, I'm just openly using drugs. Like, how am I not getting arrested? I need something to stop this. So that was a really long way to tell you that whole last year was a rock bottom for me.
Got it, man. That's good. I like hearing that. So you said something really important. If parents are listening to this, man, I know that codependency is what keeps us alive as addicts. If you could talk to the parents, what would you tell them?
I think that, my parents, I think that trying to help your kid is a phenomenal thing. And, and it wasn't all in vain. They sent me to treatment center and they planted the seed. When I was finally ready to get sober, I knew what to do. And I'm appreciative that they tried. They probably just tried for about a year or two too long. I think that you absolutely have to try to help your kid. But if the minute you start feeling like you're putting way more into this than they are and they continually keep going, they're just not done yet. And nothing you're going to do is going to make them want to be done. And so I think loving them, but if it starts to get to the point where like with my family, it was tearing up. My parents have been married 50 years now, and they were going to get a divorce like over me. Like, it was getting bad.
Because mom wanted to support you and dad wanted to kick you out or what?
Exactly. Dad said he's done. I'm not dealing with him. I'm not sending him to rehab. I mean, keep in mind, he's refinancing his home to send me to treatment centers. Unbeknownst to me, I don't care because I just want to go to rehab. And so it was, and she wanted to keep enabling me. And, it was really painful for her to kind of just let me go, knowing that it got cold here in Utah. And she knew she knew I was homeless. She also knew I was very resourceful. And she said, it made me happy to know that you had enough charisma and grit that I know you weren't sleeping on the streets, but she worried. So I think the message is like, if at some point where it's tearing apart your family, because the addict is this tornado going through everyone's lives. And we're in the middle of it going, what's the problem here? Why is everyone freaking out? I'm fine. And if that tornado is affecting every area of your family dynamic, like you have to get to a point where, and I think it's really hard, you have to let the addicts find a rock bottom. If my mom had kept enabling me, I don't think I'd be here today. The minute she stopped giving me all the money and everything, I had to finally find what rock bottom looked like. And it was hard for them because the chances of me dying, but what's funny is looking back, and now they can admit this, the chances of me dying by her enabling me were going to be significantly greater.
Okay, I hope there's some people that just parked up right there, because that's important. Because as a father, man, I mean, if my son came to me and said, "Hey, Dad, I need help," I could see myself getting into a codependent relationship. I mean, lucky that I've gone through it and stuff, but I could see it.
Yeah, I worry about that one day because, but I think I'm so grateful they let me hit that bottom. I really am, and it was tough for them, but man, it's what finally got me clean.
Love it. So you posted one day a quote that I really dig, man. You said accountability is the crutch that makes it happen, right?
Yeah.
Share on that, man. What do you mean? Because I could draw a ton of correlations in sobriety to that.
And that's really where it stemmed from. So obviously, I do coaching. I believe in the power of accountability. I believe in that so much. It's but when I really look back, and how I got sober, and this is not how I don't know how you got so, was through 12-step rooms, and they do sponsorship in there, and I'm not dogmatic on any way. I'm dogmatic on, I mean, any way that you can get sober is phenomenal. That's how I got sober. And they told me to get a sponsor in these AA meetings. And so I asked this guy to sponsor me. And as I was going on the process and I started getting back into coaching myself, I was like, oh, my sponsor's just a sober coach. He's someone I'm accountable to each week. He held me uber accountable. Like, I remember one time I showed up, and it was 7:07. I was supposed to be there at 7. And there was a post-it note on the door that said, "Better luck next week. Try being on time." Ooh. And I remember I'm thinking, what a dick. And I grabbed it off. I went to my car and I sat there. I'm like, I was fragile. I was like, 5 months sober. And I'm like, going to cry. I'm like, how could he do that to me? And he texted me and he said, "I'm doing this because I love you, not because I hate you. Please show up on time. It's a skill you need to learn. You have to be accountable to yourself." And so I'm so grateful for moments like that. But it really, I met with him every week. He gave me assignments and told me what to do. We talked about my life. He held me accountable on things. And we got application and we went on. And I had a plan for the week, for the next week, and I'd meet him again. And I got a life out of that beyond my wildest dreams. And then when I started helping other people in nutrition, I started seeing the power of holding them accountable in a graceful yet gritty way. That's where that post came from. Was I just looked back and, I remember a therapist telling me to, because I had a sponsor, I had a therapist, like I was a sick puppy. I needed all the work. And I told him, "Hey, thank you so much for everything you do." And he said, "Man, I hold you accountable and I give you some direction." And he said, without accountability, the chance for long-term change is not significantly high.
Okay, so let me build on that right now. Let me talk to you about in your life. How accountable are you with everything you do now? I'm talking about with your son. I'm talking your relationships, the way you eat. I mean, that's what I think people are missing in recovery so much is they want to kind of dibble or dabble in it, man. They don't want to just jump in. Make sense?
Dude, 1000%. And it's interesting. It's another great question. I'm pretty accountable to myself. And there's certain things where, let me give you an example, actually. So a couple of things. When I talked about being on time, that guy really instilled that in me. And granted, like I was late here, but that was technical. I chronically kind of had a problem with being late to everything my whole life. And in fact, I learned to kind of embrace it. I was like, I'm the late guy all the time. And because of that was instilled early on, I'm not with my son's mom, and we have a good relationship, but she's very, very prompt. And I need to be accountable to show up on time to pick up my son. And like, that means a lot to me. And when I'm with him, trying to give him my undivided attention is extremely important to me too. A diligent morning routine is something I've done since I very first got sober. Nobody's holding me accountable to that but me. Nobody knows if I'm doing that but me, but I can tell when I do it or I don't. I can tell when I connect spiritually in the morning to a power greater than myself. And I'm accountable to my food. I track, I'm tracking all my macros right now. I don't have a coach. I'm holding myself accountable to that because I've done it long enough. The answer to your question is I think that's where so many people, they want to tiptoe in the shallow end on certain things, but I'll go deep end. It's like, no, you start making commitments to yourself and you follow through, whether somebody's holding your feet to the fire or not, you know.
So what's a morning routine? How, like, be square with us. Like, what does a morning routine in Brad's life look like?
You know, winds and waves. There was periods where, you know, this morning routine to me was something that was so kind of almost sacred, to the point where I'm talking for the first 4 years of my recovery, to where I would get in fights with, you know, my soon-to-be ex-wife now, or the girlfriend before her, if they would come mess up my morning routine. I'd be like, leave me alone. Don't you see? I got the music playing. I'm writing. Like, and that was super unhealthy. And I realized how much of an, like, that is not designed for me to, I gotta be more adaptable and flexible within that. And so it's weaned and waved over the years. And there's periods where I do more, but like right now, let me give you an example of what I do. I have this, I do a gratitude journaling thing. I'm using this thing called the Focus Journal, which is a local friend of mine had and gave to me. And so it's been a cool little change up from just free flowing journal. It's like, what am I grateful for today? Positive affirmations about myself. What is one big victory, you know, that's happened to me, you know, in the last week or day. And then there's kind of an open journal section. So I usually put pen to paper. It seems to really help me. And some days it's more extensive than others. And, but when I wake up, I do some quick breath work. I use this breath work app. I'm not associated with them. I just like it. And do some breath work. For me, that was kind of my form of meditation. I was really struggling with traditional meditation. And so when I could just follow a breath pattern and someone guided me through it, I do that. I wake up. I hit my knees. Thank God for another day. Ask him to guide me through the day. And when I say God, I'm not even quite sure exactly what I'm not religious per se, but there's power right in myself that's guiding this life. That's for sure. So I connect spiritually, and then I connect through writing to more myself and my spirit. And then I try to do a little bit of reading. And sometimes it's out of a book. I just got done reading Atomic Habits for the second time.
Great book.
Phenomenal book. And I'm talking, sometimes I read a page. Sometimes I read 10. But for me, it was just the consistency of doing it was the most important. Not how much. I didn't put these parameters on, you have to read this much. It was like, just do it. And some mornings I had more time, I'd read more, highlighting. Other times it was just one page to keep me consistent in doing it. So, you know, and then I take a cold shower. And there's a lot of reasons behind that, but that's my morning routine. And sometimes that takes all of 5 minutes and sometimes it's 30 minutes.
Yeah, so you hit it right there, man. Most people fail to be consistent long enough to reap the huge rewards. And the consistency for me is, that's why people relapse.
Yep.
Is they stop being consistent, man. Like those routines after a few months of sobriety, like, well, man, I got this, which are the 3 scariest words in recovery. You know, you never say that. But because in my mind, I'm also a coach. I try to do coaching. I feel like for me, that structure and that accountability are probably the 2 most important words that we give any recovering addict, because even in our addiction, we were accountable and structured, right? Yep. Were we not?
100%.
Yeah. And we were hella good at chasing it, and we never missed. Think about it. Did you ever not have it?
For periods of time, but best believe I found a way. I wasn't sick for very long.
Right.
Absolutely. I would do anything. I would go to any lengths to chase that high. Any lengths, whatever I had to do. I'm talking drive hours at a time sometimes. I mean, whatever I had to do, I would make happen. I was consistent as shit on my determination to get that high. And you're right, people, I still do the same. I do a version of the exact same things I did on day 1 and now on day, 3,000 to get sober. It's like, I don't go to 7 meetings a week anymore, but I'm still involved. I still do a morning routine. I still pray. There's these diligent, consistent practices that I've just kept going. I never want to feel like I got this.
What happens when you miss those patterns? What happens to you mentally?
You know what's interesting? It's a really good question. So at first, probably the first 4 or 5 years, man, I wouldn't do a morning. Oh, I also make my bed every single morning. That is important to know. I went to this meeting when I was first, I was like 60 days sober. And it was an old timer meeting. This guy was sharing, and I don't remember anything he said, except for he told the story about he made his bed every day. And his sponsor told me, you can't do anything right in life right now, but the one thing you can do, make your bed, because your life is a mess. So when you get home and you go in, at least one thing is put together in your life. That resonated. Whatever reason, that one, I don't remember anything else he said, but that clicked. I've made my bed. I could not leave my house without making my bed. I make my bed first thing after I do my breath work. And those consistent practices, like when I don't know what it looks like to not make my bed because I haven't done it. But those first 4 or 5 years when I didn't do my morning routine, and I didn't do something like that, immediately I would feel off. What's been interesting, it's been kind of this double-edged sword, was now I've gotten a little more emotional sobriety in the last 3 years. I've dug a little deeper and I've done some different spiritual work, and where I can actually go I don't do it often, but there's been times where I've gone through different phases, super busy with work. I make all the excuses, and I can go 3 or 4 days or maybe a week, and I don't notice I'm super off kilter until all of a sudden I do. Like all of a sudden I snap about something super small, and I'm like, there's a reason for this. So I definitely notice I'm a little more agitated. I'm a little more restless. I'm a little more discontent. It's a little more cunning now because I can actually get away with it longer, that it's almost a dangerous zone. And that's how I see people go out after long-term sobriety, is they kind of go stretches without doing much for their recovery. Life's fine, and then, I'll just keep going. Then they justify certain behaviors, and before they know it, they got a drink in their hand again or a pill in their hand.
It comes down to effort.
Yeah.
If you think about it, anything you want that's hard takes effort. Going to the gym every day is effort. Staying sober is effort. Eating right is effort. Having a relationship with your higher power is effort, right? Mm-hmm. It's crazy, that correlation. So what time do you get up in the morning?
6:45.
Every day, out of bed.
Yeah.
How often you lay in there?
How often do I what?
Just lay there.
Not often.
Not often, right? I notice that, like, little things like that kill me. Because back in the day in your active addictions, your alarm would go off 7 o'clock. You're laying in bed, and it's like, I have nowhere to go. what?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how?
I have my alarm go off at 6:45. I have this alarm. It's called a hatch. It's pretty cool. It like starts barely bringing light in, and it reflects kind of the rays of the sun. You can pick like Malibu sunrise or and it slowly starts to lighten, and then these birds start to chirp really slowly. And then it gets higher and higher. So for about the first 10 minutes, so my alarm actually goes off at about 6. The light starts going on at 6:40. I usually wake up when the birds get a little louder about 6:45, and I'll kind of lay there till about 6:50, and then fully wake up. And then I immediately do my breath work, still laying in my bed. So the reason why I am out of bed by 7 a.m. regardless. The reason why I started putting at 6:45 was I found just to give me that 10 minutes to do some breath work, kind of get focused, and then hop out of my bed. So I am laying there for a minute, but it's very intentional why I'm doing it.
Very different than when we were in active addiction.
Oh gosh, man. Yeah, I mean, I don't even have times I've hit the snooze button.
So let's end up with this, man, because I think it's really, I love how you ended this. Well, you post a ton on social media. I want to push people there. I love your approach. I love what you're pushing out. Tons of stuff on nutrition and eating and sleeping. And I wish we had a ton of time to talk about sleep, because I think that's important. But you said nothing changes if nothing changes. Change is hard. Change is uncomfortable. Change can bring out the ego. So if you're changing and you're feeling it, then you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Tell me how you can apply that to maybe someone in active addiction that, hey, it's uncomfortable.
It is uncomfortable, and it should be. And, I went through countless, attempts to get sober where it didn't feel that uncomfortable because it wasn't really changing. Like I kind of knew, all right, I'll do this for a little bit. I'll get a little break and I'll go back to using. And so this time it felt really uncomfortable, and, it sucked. And it wasn't just my circumstances. I mean, I was living on, some mattress in a guy's spare room that I had to beg to let me stay there. He was sober, and it was uncomfortable. I was waiting tables, try to get back and get my foot back in the fitness industry. And I was taking the bus in the middle of winter in Utah, and it was all uncomfortable, my circumstance, but how I felt was because I didn't know who I was. So it should feel uncomfortable. And that's the price of admission, is it might at first. And, I sometimes put on a better face than how I was feeling. I remember they told me act better than I feel, but man, I didn't know who I was. What does Brad actually like? What are my somebody asked me, what are my hobbies? And I just stared at them, and I go, I like working out. And they're like, anything else? Couldn't think of it. I didn't know. what did I used to like to do? Do I still like those things? Like I had to re-identify, like I had to find this whole new growth. Like it truly was like a rebirth of who I am. And that is an uncomfortable process when you're a 28-year-old adult and I feel like I'm 16, trying to like figure out, who am I? What do I like? What do I dislike? I always just said yes. And I was a big people pleaser. What are my boundaries? This shit's that's not comfortable to figure out as an adult. Like, what am I? Who am I? What do I stand for? I didn't even know. Somebody asked me what was my political view. And I said, I don't, am I supposed to have one? And like, I don't even know if I'm supposed to today, but I had no clue about who I was. And finding that is uncomfortable. And, it doesn't always feel good. And that's why people end up going back out before they can even get the gift of the miracle. That's the punchline, is like that first year was not all, there was good things that happened. There was a lot of good. And luckily those things gave me enough shining light that I could see, because it's felt dark at times, but something good would happen. And I was like, there's a light. Again, I see something. Okay, I'm going to follow this. If you're there, like you're right where you need to be. When I help new guys in sobriety, I tell them, hey, listen, man, if life still kind of sucks and you're trying to figure out who you are and what are you about, like, cool, like you're right where you need to be. Let's go, and really there was good things that were happening. And I need to mention that because it wasn't all doom, or I wouldn't have kept going. The work started showing me that, like, my relation, all of a sudden my family invited me over to a family party when I was 4 months sober. The first time they let me back in the house, because I'd stolen so much money from them. And that was such a blessing. I was so grateful for that. And that gratitude is what I started to chase. So there were good things happening. But when I was alone going to bed, man, this head would start spinning, and it was tough. And it was tough, and it felt really alone at times. But then, I picked up the phone and I talked to other people, and they told me, hey, like, that's how I felt too. And today I do not feel like that. Like, there is hope beyond, if you would have told me, 8 years ago that I would have the life I have today, I'm not even talking just material success or anything, just how I feel when I wake up and go to bed. I would have told you were high, like you were crazy. I would have never pictured that, like, I could actually wake up happy, excited for the day, and go to bed with some peace and close my eyes happy. Like, that didn't make sense to me. So yeah, you're right where you need to be if you're feeling it. That change is hard.
Change sucks.
Yeah.
So how long did it take you to reinvent this Brad? Right? Because like you said, there's a process. You had to kind of fall in love with yourself. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but you have to like even like yourself. Yep. Right? How long did it take for you to like look back and say, oh, all right, I'm seeing this?
I think after the first year, I started to, feel pretty, like it started. It definitely started. In looking where I'm at today, I thought I was a lot further along then than I really was, but I think that was almost necessary. I think my higher power was kind of like, hey, I needed that. But, I think in the past, honestly, and this is the gift of continuing to, explore the work and explore yourself and continuing to dive into those things, is probably in just the last 2 years. I feel like there's been a new realm of me as a businessman, as a father, as a content creator, as a podcaster. Like, I started to find, and what happened was I stopped trying to be like everybody else. I stopped trying to, I just started speaking my truth, and especially on social media, just saying it how I feel. And maybe people don't like it, or maybe they do, but it's the only truth I got. And so, like, this is how I feel. It was probably the last couple of years that, like, there's been a whole new me. And in fact, people have noticed, they said, man, I was always so hyper, always. And I'm still a pretty animated guy, but I was so hyper. In the last couple of years, people that have known me for a long time have commented along the years, like, hey, dude, like, you just seem a lot more calm and at ease in your life. And like, finding this kind of persona of like who I am. And really it came down to just learning to speak my truth without fear of like what people might think.
How often your old behaviors kick in?
Not that much.
That's good.
Not that much when I do a few simple things, which is, a morning routine for me, trying to help other people with not expectations of getting shit in return. There's some principles I try to live by. And when I do those things, those behaviors stay at bay. But man, when I rest on those laurels, they come back quick, and I'm a little more anxious. I'm riled up, and I'm not, pausing when agitated and thinking through a situation. I used to, my father, one of the best men I know, my dad rarely, if ever, has had to apologize to people in his life. I mean, he has, but he always thinks before he talks. And it bugged me as a kid and even as an early adult. I'd be on the phone with him and I'd say something and I'd be like, hello? And he's like, I'm just thinking. Okay. And then he would wait to say, he's the least impulsive man I know when it comes to his words. And I thought, I'm never going to be like him. And over the years, especially this last year, probably, I've noticed that when people say stuff to me, I'll hear him on the phone. Hey, you there? I'm like, yeah, I'm just thinking. I'm like, holy shit. Being like my dad.
Yeah.
And I stopped doing a lot of those things real quick again. I'm interrupting people. I'm spitting off things that I'm not thinking all the way through that maybe are coming out rude or wrong or just are rude, And so, those behaviors stay at bay when I do a few simple things to realize, that I'm not in charge here.
Right on, man. Last question. You ready for this? Best advice you could give a newcomer?
There's a lot of cheesy one-liners I could say, but, the whole one day at a time mentality is talked about a lot in recovery communities. But if you can fully grasp what that truly means, I remember, a guy telling me, hey, listen, the one day at a time is simply just think about it like this. He said, if you got 1 foot in yesterday, you're regretting all your decisions, regretting everything. Why am I not further? When I found out I had a 505 credit score, I was like, is that good, bad? And they're like, that's horrible. You owe everybody money. Apparently, when you take out a $200 payday loan, and you don't pay it, it turns into $2,000. Like it was constant. And he said, you're worried about all that. You got 1 foot in yesterday, and you got 1 foot in tomorrow, future tripping about what life's going to bring to you. If this is going to happen, can you really stay sober? You are literally pissing all over today. And I remember that analogy. I never forget it. I just think about and I'm just literally urinating on today. He said, the one day at a time mentality is staying right, getting those feet out of there, and it's just centered right here. And if you can truly just grasp it, because the shame and guilt of what you've done, and then the fear of what's to come, or if you can do this, or maybe you have a court date coming up and you might go to jail. There's these scary things keep you from just living in today. And the whole atomic habits, like, what can I do to be 1% better? I wish someone had told me that when I was first like, hey, dude, you just got to be 1% better today. That's it. And one day at a time, and just stay in the game, and do not give up before the miracles happen, because they come. They come, and sometimes quickly and sometimes slowly, but they will materialize. I promise you that. But in the moment, it feels so dark. But this is the price of admission to get a life beyond your wildest dreams. It doesn't come without a ton of work and a ton of pain.
Right on, man. Hey, I appreciate your time today. You're a phenomenal guest, phenomenal insight into recovery. So if we're gonna push people over to your website, your coaching. How would we get a hold of you on to do some coaching?
Yeah. So my website, my company is called Key Nutrition. I've got 9 other fabulous coaches. It's keynutrition.com. We do nutrition and fitness coaching with people all over the country and world, and here locally as well, based off of macros, and do training programs. And then I am still taking a few more clients, not a ton, but you can find any information on keynutrition.com. And then our podcast, the Key Nutrition Podcast, tons about nutrition, fitness, mindset, and you'll hear a lot of recovery principles sprinkled in, because I think it's so similar to someone's fitness journey.
Totally. And so the Sober Bodybuilder.
Yep.
They can go check you out, follow you on Instagram, and see what you're doing. I recommend it. You have some great cues on there, great ideas. So, Brad, appreciate your time. Go chase the vase, brother.
Hey, thanks, man. Appreciate your time.
Yes, sir.
You've been listening to Chase the Vase Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Anchor, or Apple Podcast to get new, fresh, weekly episodes. For more information, please follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook, or visit our website, chasethevase.com. Until next time, keep chasing the vase.